Bills Mafia on tonight's Air Raid Hour. We'll be breaking down free agents on offense the Buffalo Bills should consider. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. This is Monday Night Live here on the Cover One Sports Network, presented as always by Picasso's Pizza. And we've already got some great comments coming in, right? Charles G coming in says, time for Beane to hit the clearance rack. The Trek reviewer coming in saying Derrick Henry. So it's going to be sort of like the Harvey Two-Face from, right? Is that Harvey Dent, right? From
Harvey
Batman
Dent, yeah.
with the Two-Face. Yeah. On one side, you want the Buffalo Bills to go chase the big name free agents. And then on the other side, not maybe so much. You want Brandon Beane to maybe control himself a little bit, reset the Buffalo Bills salary cap a little bit, maybe focus a little bit more this season on the draft. Because I'll tell you what, Dave, my name is Steve Mathis, by the way. You can follow me on Twitter at the Bills Guys. As always, Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. I don't know. I'm just not excited about free agency this year as someone comes in with Tyler N comes in with Quez, all exclamation points, and Deontay Foreman, all exclamation points. I don't know. I'm just not feeling it this year. My heart and soul is in the draft, I think, because I finally want the Buffalo Bills to sort of hit that reset button.
Well, and also if you've watched the shameless plug, go back and watch the salary cap extravaganza show. You'll realize that if you're not aware, the Bills are currently $50 million over the cap. Now, obviously, operationally, they have to get under that before the league year starts. And there's a number of tons of moves that the Bills are going to make to do that. But the range of outcomes as far as like how much cap room they're going to have to play with kind of varies, right? We could have anywhere from $10 to $15 million of cap room, which obviously a couple million of that's going to have to go to draft picks, to anywhere really upwards of $30 to $40 million of cap room, depending on how many restructures and extensions and things of that nature they do. So I think how aggressive the Bills are in free agency will largely be dictated by a lot of those moves that the Bills maybe have to make. And look, the other part of this is they might not be able to get all of this done right on day one as well, right? So they're not going to necessarily get a Deion Dawkins and Taron Johnson extension like immediately day one on the league, when free agency opens. So there's a lot that still has to happen between now and March, right? In the 3 weeks that we've got leading up to now is almost maybe as important as the free agency, opening itself. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. My focus is on preparing yourself for 2024, but also just extending this window and keeping it open longer. And you can do both things. The Kansas City Chiefs prove that. They won a Super Bowl in their reset year 2 seasons ago, and then they won it again this season with probably one of the league's best defenses that they built sort of during that reset year with all the draft picks that they had collected. So the Chiefs are the blueprint. They've proved that it is possible. And Charles G comes in and says, I'm jaded from last year, guys like Trent Sherfield, who we thought we better. The Buffalo Bills are going to have to probably sign a lot of Trent Sherfield types this year at all types of positions. And they're just going to have to hit, and they're going to have to find better contributions from those type of players. And I got a little trivia question for you here to start. What do all of these following players have in common? Because I think this is an important conversation to be had before we get into the actual free agents here. Mitch Trubisky, Shuk Okorafor, Eddie Jackson, Cody Whitehair, Dwayne Brown, Carl Lawson, Jordan Whitehead, Quentin Jefferson, Mike Evans. What do all of these players have in common?
Well, I think the giveaway for me is you mentioned Mitch Trubisky and Quentin Jefferson. And so immediately my head goes to, okay, players that are released before the league year starts are not going to count against the comp pick formula. So if the Bills were to sign any of those guys, it wouldn't negate any kind of comp pick formula for them. Am I right?
Yeah, Chris Jenke comes in and says they're washed. I think that's funny, but you are 100%.
They are washed.
On.
Maybe.
These are all players who were released or had their contracts voided. They do not count against the compensatory fix formula. And that's just like 10 guys that I listed off. There's going to be 30 or 40 more of them by the time free agency kicks off. So all the guys that we talk about tonight, there's going to be 30 or 40 more guys piled on top of this list by the time we get to free agency. And we'll talk about them sort of as we go along. But if you're the Buffalo Bills and you're looking to be competitive in 2024 and do everything you can to keep this roster good enough to give you a shot to win the Super Bowl, but also set you up for success in 2025, 2026, 2027. These are probably some of the guys that you're honing in on because you could lose Gabriel Davis. You could lose AJ Epinesa. Daquan Jones and Leonard Floyd don't count against this formula, but Tyrell Dodson could even get a decent money deal out there in the free agent market. There are players that are leaving Buffalo that will make some money that could accumulate us some compensatory picks if we don't go on a spending spree of our own. So I think it's really important to balance some of those things, just like we balanced them last year. And we can have, again, pushing 10 picks in 2025. So I think that's something to really consider. So it puts a little bit of a damper on what we're talking about today, because a lot of the guys we're going to talk about today count against the compensatory pick formula, but it's something to keep in mind as we go along.
It's something to keep in mind. And it's like, we dealt with this kind of in a singularity so far in the Beane era with Tremaine Edmonds, right? He's really been the one big fish, so to speak, that's kind of escaped, right? The Beane era.
The Bills have not let their guys escape like other franchises have.
Exactly. Like we've seen Matt Milano get an extension. We've seen Stephon Diggs get extension.
Poyer Hyde.
And we've seen Trey White, Poyer Hyde. Tremaine Edmonds is really the only one who's kind of left and gotten that big money deal. And the Bills have really done a good job at not letting that happen. But this year is going to be different, right? Gabriel Davis is likely going to be out the door. Leonard Floyd, AJ Epinesa are likely out the door. Like it's going to be one of those periods where you're probably going to be net negative as far as like talent going out the door versus coming in when it comes to free agency. And that's why I think, to your point that you made earlier, the draft's going to be really so important. But obviously we're focusing this show tonight on the offense for free agency.
Yeah, before we get too into the weeds tonight, remember to sign up for Cover One Pass. I know what you're thinking. We're already into the off season. It's a waste of money, all these various different things. Right now, Eric, Ant, and the guys are doing something that I don't think a lot of you see a lot of on social media, on internet websites. They're scouting impending NFL free agents. You go in and you type a draft prospect's name into Twitter, and you can find dozens of accounts that are breaking down these players' games, that are showing highlights and telling you with the positives and the negatives of college football prospects. It's very rare that you can type a free agent's name right into a Google search and get a comprehensive breakdown of some of these players. So if you're interested in how Jeremy Chin fits with the Buffalo Bills, how Noah Brown fits with the Buffalo Bills, Eric and Anth and all of them are right now, and they've just started publishing them on cover1.football. They're doing a comprehensive breakdown of dozens of free agents at positions that are important to the Bills: wide receiver, safety, defensive line. And they're breaking down the positives and the negatives of these players. They're projecting how much it'll cost to sign these players, and they're giving comprehensive scouting reports on how they fit specifically to the Buffalo Bills. So if
with video and film,
Yep. So if that's something that interests you, cover1.football, sign up for the Cover One Pass account. It is totally worth your money. We'll talk about some of these prospects tonight, but we're going to be giving the cliff notes. That's what we do on this show. It's a lot of the cliff notes. We're having a conversation back and forth. We're going to be talking about a dozen or so prospects at each position. So it's hard to really do the deep dive like Eric and Anth do. So they're going to be breaking it all down for you on cover1.football. And you should also check out the Film Room, as they will be talking about some of these prospects more in depth as well. So let's get to the Buffalo Bills free agent targets and talk about finding value in free agency this year. And the Buffalo Bills, I think, are certainly going to be looking for value at the quarterback position. I don't expect the Buffalo Bills to go out and sign the Gardner Minshew type of backup. And I think you're on the same page as me. But at the same time, I feel like it's important for the Buffalo Bills to go out and add some semblance of a been there, done that veteran presence at quarterback to go along with Shane Buechele and to go along with maybe a quarterback they decide to draft in the later rounds or sign as an undrafted free agent. And that's because I really truly feel like if Josh Allen is ever injured for a month, right, he's out for 3-4 weeks. I want a savvy veteran quarterback behind him who's maybe capable of keeping you at 500, keeping you afloat. If Josh Allen gets knocked out of a game in the third quarter, I want a quarterback who's been there, done that, can come in cold and won't poop his pants and can close the game, right? That's what I think you're looking for. Now the argument is, who do you sign to that role? I think Kyle Allen, who we already have, is more than competent of doing that. The other name that makes sense because he doesn't count against comp picks and he's been here before is Mitchell Trubisky. So I think the conversation for backup quarterback starts with Kyle Allen and Mitchell Trubisky. How about yourself?
I mean, I 100% agree. And this is the nature of what it's going to be like this free agency period. You are going to have to compromise somewhere, right? Obviously, you're going to go into camp when all said and done with your 90 guys. But right now, if you are allocating precious resources, right, precious few resources to free agency, the backup quarterback at this stage for the Bills, this particular offseason, the 2024 offseason in particular, I'm not saying this is the case every year, but I'm saying that the case this year is that it needs to be a bargain bin vet type. So whether that's Mitch Trubisky or Kyle Allen, it doesn't really matter to me. I just don't think it's economical to go out and go after a Gardner Minshew type when you already have limited resources to begin with. So I agree with you. It's going to be, or I at least assume it's going to be a Kyle Allen or Mitch Trubisky type. I'd be fine with either one.
Yeah, Chris Jenke comes in. He throws another sort of wrench into this. He says, I wouldn't mind signing a Josh Dobbs as QB2 if he could come in for cheap. I think he's a slight upgrade over Kyle Allen. I have Josh Dobbs on my list here. If the Buffalo Bills do decide to go outside of Kyle Allen or Mitchell Trubisky, he was effective in short spurts.
He'll get more money than those two guys. That would be my guess.
And that's the question, is how much money is he going to get? Because he started off hot in Arizona. He was that great story in Minnesota, but then he sort of had that 4 interception game where it kind of sputtered for him. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that it finally caught up to him and he was so far behind, not understanding what was going on in Minnesota. So that might hurt his contract, but I do think he'll cost more than Kyle Allen or Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like Kyle Allen was here on a 1 year, $1.2 odd million deal last year. I mean, I gotta think Josh Dobbs is going to get at least $2 million to be a backup somewhere. So look, $800,000 when it comes to like this big money, league and the salary cap, like that's a veteran.
Yeah.
That's a veteran, the defensive lineman somewhere, right? So like that makes a difference. So yeah, I mean, and that's the minimum I think Josh Dobbs probably could get. He probably could get north of 2-3 million.
Yeah. And a great comment from Will Wilson Sr. saying astronauts aren't cheap. That is in fact true with Joshua Dobbs. Some other names that I like outside of Trubisky and Dobbs, Carson Wentz I thought looked good in his spot start at the end of the season versus the LA Rams. There's always the concern that some people have with like his attitude, I guess. Like people don't think he's like the greatest locker room guy, but Sean McVay didn't seem to have an issue with him. Another name that I like a lot is Drew Lock. But again, just like Josh Dobbs, Drew Lock came in and looked pretty all right behind playing in place of Geno Smith, led that one comeback victory on Monday Night Football, former first-round pick, big can of an arm. I don't think you're going to be able to get him to sign a deal like Mitch Trubisky signed a couple of years ago to come, and resurrect his career. I think he's probably shown enough where he's going to want to go to a place with a questionable starting quarterback where he might have a chance to earn his way onto the field and be a legitimate starter. And then you have names like Joe Flacco, Jacoby Brissett, Tyler Huntley, Marcus Mariota. Those are all names that are probably out of the Buffalo Bills price range.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's just one of those things where Drew Lock to me would be nice because I think obviously he showed that resilience coming in and obviously coming back in that game. And I think like early on when he was in Denver, I think Drew Lock got like a bad rep of being like this sort of like immature, kind of kiddish type of guy. But like when you saw him at the end of that game, that interview, I think he won a lot of people over after that win he had in prime time. And by all accounts, like what Pete Carroll said and his teammates said, he was a fantastic teammate. So I think Drew Lock has endeared himself to probably many people and has gotten the eye of some people. And I do think he'll probably be priced out more in that mid-tier sort of backup range, you know, $3-4 million range. And I think that's probably just going to be too much for the Bills in this cycle. Although he would probably be my preference.
And another guy, one last name I'm going to throw out there, because I'll tell you what, free agency is just so overwhelming prepping for this show. Just the hundreds of names of guys who are free agents.
You're never going to, quarterback's a little different.
The Bills are just going to sign like 4 guys that we didn't talk about, and we're going to look like idiots. But anyway, Brandon Allen, why not just add to the Allen collection? I have always liked Brandon Allen when he was in Cincinnati. Yeah. Then he sort of played well enough to get Trey Lance pushed out in San Francisco behind Sam Darnold there. So I like Brandon Allen as well as sort of a journeyman backup who could come in and possibly be the backup to Josh Allen. So just keep the Allen thing rolling. JG coming in with it from Twitter or from X. He says, off topic, but I dug the mock draft exercise you did today.
Yeah, that was good.
Choosing a different position round 1. And the reason why I did that is because free agency hasn't happened yet, right? Like, what if the Buffalo Bills go out and make a splash and like sign a Mike Evans or sign a Hollywood Brown, right? Like, I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does, I think a whole lot of people will feel better about drafting a wide receiver in the 2nd or the 3rd round as opposed to the 1st. What if a guy like Jerzon Newton is sitting there at 24 or 28 because for some odd reason he dropped in the draft? That's a top 15 pick who's just sitting there. Possibility for you to take. So I did one mock draft with a wide receiver in the 1st round, one with an edge rusher with the 1st pick. I traded back into the 2nd round to take Darius Robinson. I didn't want to take an edge in the 1st. I took one safety in the 1st round. Cooper DeJean fell in that mock. It just happened to happen. So, and then I took one with a defensive tackle in round 1. It just kind of shows the different ways the draft could look depending on how the Buffalo Bills decide to utilize their 1st pick. But you can check that out over on our social media handle at the Bills Guys. And before we get into our next topic here, which is skill position players, this show is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Buffalo Pizza since 1980. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And if you're an out-of-towner like us, you could even get it mailed to your home. And I can tell you from experience, it's just as good as getting it fresh from the restaurant. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, on to the skill position talent. And we will start at running back. The Buffalo Bills only have currently 3 running backs on the roster in James Cook, Nyheim Hines, who's coming off a significant injury and could be a cap casualty, and Darrington Evans, who was with us in training camp last year and then went elsewhere before making his way back here on a futures deal. So Damian Harris, Latavius Murray, Ty Johnson are all impending unrestricted free agents. To me, and I think to most of Bills Mafia, the guy we want back is Ty Johnson, right? So the way I look at it, to me, the way I'm approaching free agency and the way I approached at looking for guys who fit the Buffalo Bills, I'm looking for Ty Johnson, a bargain bin free agent in the Latavius Murray mold, probably younger, and a day 3 draft pick. And Ty Johnson, the veteran, bargain bin free agent, and the day 3 draft pick will all come in here and compete for reps behind James Cook. The only exception to this take here is if a guy like Joe Brady looks at a former 1st round pick who is hitting the market in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who he coached at LSU, and says, hey, I want that guy to be my running back number 2. Let's give him maybe a little bit more money than the typical bargain bin guy. What are your thoughts on how the Buffalo Bills are going to approach this free agent market?
Well, first thing, I think they're going to ask Nyheim Hines to take a pay cut, right? Or he's probably going to be a cap casualty. I just don't see how the Bills pay a cap number of over $5 million for Nyheim Hines coming off of injury. So number one, I think they get him down into kind of the $2 to $3 million range if they can. Otherwise, he might be off the team, right? And so I think for me, depending on sort of how the chips fall with the Nyheim Hines situation, and obviously there's other dominoes that could affect that, like Deontay Hardy, and depending what they do with him. But depending on the chips fall with the Nyheim Hines situation, I'm actually kind of okay with them just bringing back Ty Johnson in that case and having Ty Johnson, Nyheim Hines, James Cook, and then see how the draft plays out. If you get a running back in the draft, great. If you don't, then maybe at that point, after the draft, you bring in another veteran, get get 4 guys into camp. We know that 4th guy historically had always been like Taiwan Jones, but he was a special teamer. So um, I'd be okay being a little bit more patient with running back. Although I do agree with you, I'd like to get Ty Johnson back in the fold at least if Nyheim Hines is around. So you have those 3 guys heading into the draft. I'm not in such a huge rush to get that additional guy on top of that before the draft, but afterwards, depending on how the draft goes. And maybe, who knows, maybe they do draft someone and still want to add somebody afterwards, but maybe, they take a look and see what they do in the draft first before deciding what guy they would want to bring in to kind of like round out the room. Right. So that's kind of how that would be kind of my approach.
It'll be super interesting to see where the Buffalo Bills go here. Cause on one hand, do they go out and sign a Damian Harris type, right? Who has has a resume, right? Or do they go the Duke Johnson route where the guy has a resume, but like he's pretty expendable and could be beaten out at the snap of a finger by a younger player like a Raheem Blackshear who might step up in training camp, like a later round guy who just really pops. If the Buffalo Bills decide to go the Damian Harris route, Damian Harris is always an option if he decides he wants to continue to play football. He's sort of the forgotten man here. We don't have any indication of what he wants to do, but the rumor is he wants to retire. And then I have my list of 4 guys. The first one surprises me as much as it might surprise you. I liked the way Zeke Elliott played for the New England Patriots this year. He really saved some of my fantasy teams in the back half of the season there. He's the kind of guy who can get you tough yards, can catch the ball in the backfield, can pass block, right? All the things that you want from an RB2. I think Zeke Elliott gives you that in spades. Kareem Hunt is another guy who a lot of teams just didn't want. But then once Nick Chubb went down, he went back to Cleveland and he gave them some quality snaps from the running back position. Again, as a runner, as a receiver, as a pass blocker. He's getting a little bit up there in age for a running back, but he is a perfect, I think, complement to a James Cook. You have Deontay Foreman, who has just been a favorite of this show on every free agent show we've ever done, I think. And then I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the Joe Brady connection. So those are the 4 veterans, I think, if the Buffalo Bills were to pursue a running back. 2, 3, maybe in the case of Zeke Elliott, $4 million a year. That's the type of deal that I think that would be passed out to those type of running backs. The longer they wait, one of those guys is still there, the cheaper you're going to get them. And if you can get them after the window for compensatory picks, even better. So like a June signing, a May signing.
Yeah, I like Zeke and Foreman out of that group of 4. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is interesting me just because of like his history with Joe Brady, and obviously he came out in that draft as touted as one of the best pass catching backs, coming out in that class, and obviously kind of lost that job to Isaiah Pacheco in Kansas City, and in spots he looked okay, I thought, still for the Chiefs last year, but I think, to me, he profiles a little too much like Cook in the sense of like style. I think he's definitely a little bit more of a bowling ball than James Cook, but in that case, I'd rather have like a Zeke or a Foreman coming in to really complement Cook. And look, Zeke played for, I think it was $3 million last year for the Pats. Maybe he generates a little bit more of a market after how he played last year. Foreman played well as well, coming in for Khalil Herbert last year and really not letting Roschon Johnson take over that role either. So both of those guys are nice fits. Again, running backs market, we know how it's been devalued. I think if you're patient here, you could end up getting one of these guys for below the comp pick formula total. So this will be a test of patience, and it'll also just be a test of, is this something the Bills really want to invest in, right? Because you're right, these guys are slightly more in the tier above the likes of a Ty Johnson or Damian Harris. But again, will the Bills be willing to kind of spend a little bit of extra there? Not a lot, but a little bit of extra at that position.
If you're looking for a Duke Johnson type of signing, kick the tires on Rashad Penny, see if he's got anything left. Chase Edmonds is a guy the Buffalo Bills pursued a couple of years ago. He's still hanging around the league. I've always liked the way Craig Reynolds has run for Detroit when given an opportunity. He'll be sitting on the market. And hey, you can always give playoff Lenny a call. And Maybe Leonard Fournette would come back here now that he sees that like a bunch of these running backs that were in front of him are now gone. So I think Leonard Fournette you have in your back pocket as well. He's comfortable with the organization, or maybe the bridge has been burned because he never got the opportunity that he wanted. So Leonard Fournette could always be a call as well. One last player before we move to wide receiver. And I think that one of the things that we need to be paying close attention to when the Buffalo Bills go out and sign free agents this year is I think we need to take a close look at special teams abilities, because the Buffalo Bills did not fire Matthew Smiley. So that means that they're banking on Matthew Smiley coordinating the way he did in 2022 when the Buffalo had one of the better special teams units in the league. And that means that they're probably going to go about trying to recultivate and retool the players on their special teams unit. So taking a look at the running backs, and there's one running back that stood out to me, and I posted about him on social media, and that's DJ Dallas from the Seattle Seahawks. He was drafted in the 4th round. His contract just expired. He was a former University of Miami standout, 5'10", 215 pounds. So he's short, he's squatty. You know, he's a good pass catcher, 61 of 71, 61 catches on 71 targets in his career, 4.2 yard per carry average, but only on 112 career carries. He's had a couple of big games and spot starting in his career. He's a noted pass blocker. He was a 3rd down back in Seattle when given the opportunity, and he's a 4-phase special teamer, 949 special team snaps over the course of 4 years. He was a pretty good kick returner. He was a not so great, but did it punt returner. And he was also a gunner on kick returns. And, you know, he played all 4 phases. I think that's something that could be intriguing to the Buffalo Bills. James Cook, Ty Johnson, DJ Dallas, and a rookie that you draft. That right there would be a bargain bin running back room behind James Cook, but I do like the upside there.
I like the upside as well. And I mean, we're not talking defense right now, but could that potentially force their hand with Saran Neal, right? If that's the case. I'm not saying that I want to cut Saran Neal by any means, but I am saying that he's going to have an over $3 million cap.
Justin Shorter's back too. Noted gunner.
Look, I like it. I like DJ Dallas. I always thought like whether it was, Kenneth Walker or whoever it was ahead of him that was, facing injuries, it seemed like he never really got that true chance in Seattle, but I always felt like when he did get chance to play, he was kind of like their version of, what's the guy's name from Washington I'm blanking on that we had but then didn't have.
J.D. McKissick.
Oh, McKissick. Yeah, obviously, like body type wise, he's not exactly the same as McKissick, but played that kind of role in 2-minute drills a lot of times for Seattle. So I like his game, and bargain bin for sure. So it's an interesting name.
On to receivers now. We're gonna skip over, I think, the tight end position. Did you put any notes down for tight ends? Because
I will be shocked if they do anything at the tight end position.
They're pretty set there. I think they might add some bodies, UDFAs, maybe late in the draft if someone's sticking out on the board. But I think they're pretty set at the tight end position. So we're gonna stick mostly to wide receiver here today. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills have Gabriel Davis walking out the door. I expect him to get a pretty decent contract, probably north of the Jacoby Myers, Marquez Valdez-Scantling deals. I wouldn't be surprised. Again, some of the advanced statistics on Gabriel Davis, his big play ability is going to be really intriguing to some teams who are looking for wide receivers. And I think he could push $14-15 million AAV on the open market. I don't think the Buffalo Bills are going to be able to pay that, afford to match that. I don't think, and I think that the Buffalo Bills will be collecting hopefully a compensatory draft pick for Gabriel Davis in return. Trent Sherfield is also a UFA. Deontay Hardy is possibly on the chopping block because of cap reasons. So you have a crater, right, in the wide receiver room for the Buffalo Bills. They need to add bodies in free agency. They need to add bodies in the draft. To me, the number one need is you need boundary wide receiver bodies, preferably receiver with some size, preferably a receiver with some speed, some field stretching ability. I also think one of the low key needs is if Deontay Hardy and Naheem Hines are cap casualties, those are your top two returners, and they're now off your roster. So a depth receiver with return flex could be something that the Buffalo Bills look to add as well. But let's start with the Buffalo Bills' number one need in free agency. And who do you think fits that mold? Who are some guys you have your eye on, some boundary wide receivers who the Buffalo Bills could reasonably probably afford?
Yeah, and like, look, a lot of people keep mentioning Curtis Samuel, and I love the player,
Mhm.
but like, he's not a boundary guy. He's
Yeah, and
predominantly a
same
slot
with
guy, and so like,
Tyler Boyd too. Like, I know the Cover One chat, we were having a conversation about Tyler Boyd today. I just don't know, man. He plays in the slot.
I know, and that's my whole point on Curtis Samuel as well. So
Mhm.
then you start to look at guys like maybe like Darnell Mooney, who also plays a lot of slot, but does play some outside as well. And the names really start kind of disappearing quickly if you're really looking for guys that are truly boundary guys. Hollywood Brown, we know that's going to be a bigger name. He can play
That's my
inside and
number
out.
one. That's my moonshot.
And I liked who you put on social media earlier today. Noah Brown from the Texans, I
Mhm.
think, is a nice option. Obviously, he's battled through some injury history, but has obviously shown the big playability last year when he got his chance when Tank Dell went down and he had to fill in even for a game or two when Nico Collins was out. Like, obviously, Noah battled his own
Mhm.
couple injuries as well, but like, that's a guy, and then people obviously will look to, and it's already been mentioned in the comic section, Quez Watkins as truly just an outside vertical type of threat.
Mhm.
The route tree is not super comprehensive for Watkins. Decently decent metrics on contested catch type plays, but
Mhm.
again, a little bit of a one trick pony there. Again, we're talking about bargain guys. This
Yep.
is a really tough spot for the Bills because this is really the only area on offense where you're kind of losing a significant amount of bodies
Mhm.
and contribution, right? So, look, for me, I think I put Hollywood Brown, Noah Brown, Darnell Mooney. Those are guys that interest me, but I also realize that like a guy like Hollywood Brown,
Yep.
realistically, is probably priced out of what the Bills are going to be able to do. So Noah Brown and Mooney, I think, are really interesting for me
Mhm.
personally. And I know there's a couple other names on your list that I'll let you
Yeah.
mention, but I like Mooney and Noah Brown.
Mhm.
Those would be the two guys for me that I'd go after.
Yeah, I've seen Hollywood Brown play firsthand here, living out here in Arizona as well. And I'll tell you what, like, I thought he was just a vertical dude playing with Lamar in Baltimore. And when he was healthy here in Arizona, he was running a full route tree. He was catching the ball at all three levels. He was looking very good. But the only problem was he could not stay healthy. So
Right.
if for some reason teams are scared away by that and he's sitting around a couple of days into free agency and he's willing to, it would take the Bills. That would be the Bills Leonard Floyd this year. That would be that would probably cost them an edge rusher, right? That would probably cost them a big money safety. But that would be their big investment if they went for a guy like Hollywood Brown. It would probably be a 1-year prove it deal. And it would probably be a deal that involved you mortgaging your future a little bit because you'd probably have to add void years to lower his cap hit, seeing as it's a 1-year deal. So a guy like Hollywood Brown is a real moonshot, but man, when he's healthy, he is a legitimate like 1B, sort of like what John Brown, I think, was here when John Brown was here type of receiver. And I think he would just play so well off of Diggs and Shakir. I would love it. I just don't think that's in the cards. And that's why I sort of pivoted to, and I think Chris Jenke does a great job. Like literally, I think he might have hacked my notes here. He says Brown could function as a wide receiver 2, 3, 4. And these are the two big things. He's a willing and good run blocker from the receiver position, and he has special teams experience as well. When he was in Dallas, he came up as a special teamer. So he fits a lot of what the Buffalo Bills are looking for. He's a guy you could probably get at a more moderate cost. So Hollywood Brown and Noah Brown are the top two on my list. And then I sort of started creating categories. And the first category I came up with was wide receivers I would feel comfortable with platooning with a highly drafted rookie. So this is a guy who's got boundary flex, maybe can play a little bit on the inside. He doesn't stop you from drafting a wide receiver high, and you can sort of bring the receiver that you draft highly along slowly, and you have some interchangeable parts. Noah Brown is the top of that list in that category.
Mhm.
Darnell Mooney is number 2 in that category, as you mentioned. And then I have, and somebody mentioned this name in the comment section earlier, so I want to bring that comment up. It was Wayman Brown. Donovan Peoples-Jones was on that list. Says he's a good value. He's a big physical, can catch. He's not a full-time outside guy, but he has some versatility inside, outside, as well as some punt return. He's just a big body who can run verticals, right? He's very much like a Gabe Davis type of player, just hasn't had the success in his career that a Gabriel Davis has had. So Donovan Peoples-Jones is on that list. DJ Chark, again, another guy with some injury problems, is on that list. He also, the one game I watched from this year, had a couple of really nice big plays and then also had a couple of drops. So DJ Chark has got some hands issues. Another name, and again, I sort of, in a very petty fashion, had this name off my list, and the Cover One guys talked me out of it because he checks a lot of boxes. And I had him off my list because he had 2 drops in the NFC Championship game, 2 crucial, just excruciating backbreaking drops in the NFC Championship game. And that's Josh Reynolds. He checks a lot of boxes for what the Buffalo Bills could use as a temporary 2, permanent 4 type of receiver with a highly drafted guy. And then I also had KJ Osborne on my list as well. Someone mentioned Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne tore his ACL week 9. I don't think you're going to see Kendrick Bourne available to anybody until at least mid-season. So really, if the Buffalo Bills are in need of a wide receiver in the back half of the season, maybe they can call up Kendrick Bourne. But I don't know who's going to sign Kendrick Bourne because I don't know how much he's going to contribute until his age 30 season in 2025 with that mid-season torn ACL. So I took him off the list. But I just categorized that list as comfortable platooning with a highly drafted rookie because there's no way I want to depend on that dude, just like there was no way we should have been dependent on Gabriel Davis this year.
Yeah, and like I feel bad for Kendrick Bourne because like he was having a nice season, like he was leading the Pats in receiving and finally got a chance to kind of like be the number 1 guy, albeit on a really bad offense, and he would have been a nice fit, I think. But yeah, I'm not willing to give that guy a contract when he might not contribute till the latter half of the season, right? It's just like we just can't. I just don't see that happening. So I do like KJ Osborne too, just to throw that in. I think that was a good name to add to the list. A little bit of size, can play the boundary. Obviously, having to be a good run blocker in that Minnesota offense, sort of blocking for Madison and Chandler, and obviously Dalvin Cook before that. So I like KJ Osborne too as a fit as far as like his blocking ability too on the boundary.
Yeah. And then a couple of other names I have here, and this is where it starts to get risky. Like you're really taking a shot in the dark. But if we draft the high draft pick, right, like a guy who's going to step in, plug and play, this is a guy I wouldn't mind as these are guys I wouldn't mind as like backups, like wide receiver 4 who can play if there's an injury. Van Jefferson, that's a high upside signing right there. A guy who we were very high on the pre-draft process. He's made some plays in his career, but just hasn't stuck in LA and then Atlanta. I really like Van Jefferson as a guy who can get vertical. I got lost in the weeds of a video breakdown today. Apparently, the way Van Jefferson chooses to catch the football, he takes a more attacking approach, and it's caused some drops in his career. So some like receiver specialists do not like the way he catches the ball. But maybe if you can get Van Jefferson in, you can retrain him on how he approaches and attacks the football. Maybe he's a guy, the drops will be cut down and he could be a real steal for you. We already mentioned Quez Watkins. Jalen Guyton is another, speedster boundary guy who's had some success in Los Angeles with the Chargers. And speaking of Los Angeles, I really like DeMarcus Robinson. I've liked him his whole career as sort of a depth receiver. The Buffalo Bills have just really bit themselves in the butt because whether it's Van Jefferson, Jalen Guyton, Quez Watkins, DeMarcus Robinson, we should already have our own version of these guys. But the Bills have really neglected drafting the wide receiver position. They are one of 2 teams in the league who haven't drafted a receiver in the first 3 rounds of the draft in the last 5 years. And I understand that they traded one of their first round picks for Stephon Diggs. I get that. But the only other team is Tampa Bay, who's got Godwin and Evans, or had Godwin and Evans.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you think about it that way, and then you start to think about how they've
Mhm.
drafted 3 running backs, on day 2
Yeah.
over the past 5 years as well, and you're like, "Wait a minute, I thought we didn't like drafting running backs early," but anyway,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, look, again, and that's why people sort of, like, funneling to this sort of, I don't wanna call it herd mentality because it's not that, like,
Yeah.
there is a very valid point to be made for going wide receiver early in this draft, and even if the Bills do sign a couple of these guys or even one of these guys, that does not go away. As we like to say, it does not preclude you
Mhm.
from doing that. So,
Je
Van Jefferson's
Mhm.
interesting. Like, he was an older prospect anyway when he was coming out. I like Jalen Guyton on that list as well. I think
Mhm.
he's battled back from some pretty major injuries, but has contributed, especially as a deep threat for LA. So, um, he can play inside and out as
Mhm.
well. He's a big body guy. I think he's like 6'1", 200 plus.
Mhm.
Um, and he can get down the field. So yeah, he'll be a bargain, I believe.
John Calvin comes in and says, I don't get spending money on the deepest wide receiver draft class ever. And I don't disagree with you. I mean, I did a mock draft today where I took Jalen Polk in the second round. I took Ricky Pearsall in the third round. So, I mean, the third round. So just imagine a world where we have Diggs, Polk, Pearsall, and Shakir. Like, that's a solid top 4 wide receivers. The only problem is if you address it sounds good on paper. Let's address defense in free agency. Let's address our other needs in free agency and let's just draft all offense, right? You telegraph what you're going to do in the draft and teams will jump you. That is the one issue you do run into. So I did a mock off season on social media where I just simply added Demarcus Robinson and I added Quez Watkins. I signed both of those guys like in a mock. I said, hey, how would you guys feel if this was what the Buffalo Bills added in free agency on offense? And I added 2 wide receivers, Demarcus Robinson, Quez Watkins. It's not going to be inspiring to anybody, but it might not telegraph so much what you're going to do on draft day, knowing that you have bodies and you can go out there and you can play a football game at wide receiver with what you have even before the draft. So that's all I'm going to say in that regard. Chris Janke mentioned Cedric Wilson. I like Cedric Wilson maybe rebounding because he played good in Dallas. But if you go back and you look at his career season, the year that got him that big contract, it came from playing the slot. And again, Tyler Boyd, Curtis Samuel, Cedric Wilson, Laviska Shenault, Paris Campbell. These are all names where I just struggle to find a role for them. If Deontay Hardy finds his way on the outs, I think some other names that could interest the Buffalo Bills, DeAndre Carter, Richie James, Braxton Berrios, Devin Duvernay, and Amir Smith Marset, who we were a big fan of in the pre-draft process. Don't sleep on guys with return flex
Yeah.
if Deontay Hardy finds his way on the chopping block.
Yeah, and getting back to that sort of conversation of which lever do you pull, you
Mm-hmm.
have a guy like Nyheim Hines, you have a guy like Deontay Hardy. Both of them, as it stands, are going to be over a $5 million cap hit individually this year. We saw Deontay Hardy make that really nice punt return. Does that give him a chance to come back as the return man? Fine. Nyheim Hines
Mm-hmm.
coming back from injury. I don't think either one of them should be at the number they're at. My preference, and I said this on the salary cap show, would be to cut one and ask the other to take a pay cut and try to save like $5 to $6 million there. And there could be a situation where you outright cut both. Now, I don't like the
Mm-hmm.
idea of just cutting people just to cut, but like,
Yeah.
I don't see how the Bills could pay Deontay Hardy over $5 million in 2024 with the wide
Mm-hmm.
receiver depth in free agency and in the draft. So I think they will have to approach him about a pay cut at some point.
All right, now on to the offensive line. I think offensive line is going to be interesting this offseason, but I don't think it's going to be really interesting in free agency unless the Buffalo Bills pull the trigger on releasing a guy like Mitch Morse, which I don't think they're going to do, or they try to trade a guy like Ryan Bates, which I don't think they're going to do. Really, the Buffalo Bills starters and backups, like first tier backups, are pretty much set. Like they can return the guys they had from last year and feel pretty comfortable. But that being said, you always want to recultivate the bottom half of your offensive line. You always want to be developing guys, but that's more of a draft type of conversation. So I'm not really expecting a lot in free agency. I'm expecting, and let's start with offensive tackle here, just like maybe 1 or 2 vets, like weeks and weeks into the free agent window, like after the after the compensatory pick window has closed. Maybe just someone to push Ryan Vandemark or act as insurance. No guarantees on the contract. Somebody who is going to have to come in and earn it in training camp. The perfect name being the guy who was here all last year and got cut at the back half of the year in Jermaine Ifedi.
Yep. The Mr. Inactive, as we call him, right? Because he was like the guy that headlined the inactive list
But we
every
felt
single
so
week.
safe. We felt
Yep.
so safe and warm inside knowing he was there.
Yeah, this is going to be probably maybe one of the lowest priority areas I would imagine for Brandon Beane. Like he can wait it out. I think Jermaine Ifedi, like these guys that you mentioned, like the market is going to be pretty bare, right, for these guys, I would imagine. So yeah, with as much as the Bills have to do, and we're going to do, pre-record the defense show, but there's so much they have to do on other areas of the roster that this just has to be, I feel like, a wait and see move if you even make one.
Especially because if you are going to spend money, it's going to be on either extending Deion Dawkins or extending Spencer Brown, who are both going into the final year of their deal. You might base salary restructure Connor McGovern. That will tie him to the Buffalo Bills even further into the future. One name I would keep an eye on is ARH Jackson, a restricted free agent. We had this conversation with Greg Tomset today. Not a lot of restricted free agents sign their tenders anymore. It used to be if you were an RFA, you were guaranteed to be back with your team, but now it's like almost $2 million at the lowest tender to retain an RFA. ARH Jackson, LA Rams. Aaron Kromer was there when he was drafted out of the University of Iowa, a college that Aaron Kromer really likes and appreciates the offensive line play. So ARH Jackson, I think, is a name to keep an eye on as maybe a very low level free agent the Buffalo Bills could pursue at the offensive tackle position. Guard is the same way. Obviously, you'd like David Edwards back. He is the one unrestricted free agent. My guess is he's probably going to be off to greener pastures, a place where he has a chance to compete for a starting job. He has proven he's come back from his concussion. He's proven he can stay healthy over the course of a year. I think he had some good reps and put some good reps on tape when he did have a chance to play with the Buffalo Bills. He has rebuilt his image. I think he will go out, and even if he doesn't get a big contract, I think he will just go somewhere where he has a better chance to play. So I don't think it's going to be easy to get David Edwards back. But again, you know who else is a restricted free agent for the Indianapolis Colts? Jack Anderson. That's a guy that maybe the Buffalo Bills would look to bring back a couple of years after they lost him to...
Better late than never, right?
I don't even remember. It was the Eagles, I think, that might have
Eagles,
got him a couple years ago, and then he's just bounced around since then. I would love it if the Houston Texans would just cut Nick Broker loose. That would make my dreams come true. So that is also something to keep an eye on as well. And Chris Jenke says ARH Jackson started every game for the Rams this year. That is true. So maybe they look to re-sign him, but I know that they had, who's the guy that we loved last year, but he was injured. So ARH Jackson was starting in his place, but ARH Jackson might not be back, and he might be getting a bigger payday with the LA Rams since he has proven himself in that year. But Jack Anderson got that guard center flex. He is someone to consider there as well. Some other just bottom of the barrel offensive lineman names at tackle: Cam Fleming, Shooks Okafor, who will not count against the Joseph Noteboom, who I was thinking of. Shooks Okafor is another guy released by Pittsburgh, so doesn't count against the compensatory pick formula. Aaron Stinney, Michael Dieter, Shane Lemieux, Elijah Wilkinson. These are all just like your typical names that could still be lying around by the end of the compensatory pick window that the Buffalo Bills could consider bringing in and competing and providing depth to the offensive line. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Some final thoughts to share here. We got a little bit of a special announcement because some people might be saying to themselves like, oh man, 50 minutes. That's quick for the Bills guys. The Bills guys are usually doing those 2-hour shows, and that is true. But one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to go back to 2 days a week. So we will actually be airing on Mondays, same time, 9 p.m. But we're also going to be back this Thursday at 9 p.m. with our free agent targets show for the defense. One caveat to all of that, though, is that this episode will be a live premiere on Thursday, but it will not be live. I think it's a nice little compromise we came up with. We're both pretty busy, so it's tough to do 2 live shows a week, but we're going to have the live show every Monday to make sure that you guys are in the comment section, you guys are contributing, we're getting everything you guys have to say, and then we're just going to have a more traditional podcast that'll drop Thursdays at 9 p.m. But you're more than welcome, since it's a live premiere, to hop on in and have your conversation in the comment section with anyone else who might be joining in on Thursday night at 9 p.m. as well. But we will be back on Thursday at 9 p.m. and then live again next Monday with our scouting combine preview. Pretty excited about this new news here, Dave.
Yeah, it's going to be nice. I agree with you on the nice compromise, like really good to just kind of dedicate one night a week. So what we're going to be doing is recording the defense show right after this, and premiering it on Thursday so that we can obviously try to maximize our schedules that we have at the moment, which are quite hectic. But obviously, in a normal situation, we'd probably be going for another 40 45 minutes, right?
Minutes here, yeah.
So
And
we're going to be doing that separately
it-
and then airing it on Thursday night.
Yeah, it's great for you guys, the live viewers, and we love the 135, 140, sometimes 200, 300 people that we have in here live. And please do not think that this is any way disrespectful to you, but people don't like watching 2-hour shows on replays, and people don't like listening to 2-hour podcasts. So 2-hour-long shows a week is a little bit more amenable to people who listen to us on demand. So we're trying to cater to everyone's needs here by having one live show a week and then one pre-recorded show a week. But I'm really excited. We got defense on Thursday, and then our favorite, dude, like we got the combine coming up. We'll have our preview shows next week, and then we'll have our reaction shows the week after. The mock draft machine. Someone said, "You're going to do a mock draft?" Not going to do a mock draft yet. Let's wait till after the combine and these simulators sort of aggregate and find a happy medium, because I think the combine, even though it shouldn't, because a lot of teams' boards are set, there's a lot of scuttlebutt and a lot of insiders get information that's been known for teams for a while. And a lot of where guys are going to be drafted starts to become a heck of a lot more clear by the end of the NFL combine with all the rumors and things that come out of it. So we will save the mock drafts until after for that reason. But we're excited about the combine coming up. Again, if you haven't already, sign up for the Cover One Premium. You can get our comprehensive free agent previews. And then once free agency is over, Eric and Anth and John and Daniel, they're going to get to work with all the various different scouting reports and film breakdowns of all the young, exciting, talented prospects out there for the Buffalo Bills to pursue. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. Smash that like on your way out. Again, the number one way that you can support this show is to hit that share button and just text or email anyone you think would enjoy watching us here on the Air Raid Hour. And until next time, Dave, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!